The protagonist of this story is a genius lawyer who suddenly finds himself sent back to when he was 14 years old after a miserable end. The first thing he does is try to get a girlfriend. Or, more accurately, rescue a girl his age from a scoundrel. Armed with his memories and the power to see future and past events, he is determined to fix his life and prevent the foolish mistakes that destroyed him. Also not forgetting to get his revenge. Our protagonist, No Hyungjin, finds a knife stabbed to his chest. No Hyungjin, a genius and the youngest lawyer with a 95% win rate, always fights for justice. Confused and demanding to know why this is happening, he finds himself face to face with a hooded man with a malicious grin. The hooded man, with a malicious grin, reminds Hyungjin that this isn't the States, and he should know better. Hyungjin is clearly annoyed but suddenly spits out a mouthful of blood. The hooded man tells Hyungjin that if he wanted justice, he should have gone to the state instead of stirring up trouble. Hyungjin, sweating bullets, asks if they are from the Doin group in Korea. The hooded man, now staring down and towering over Hyungjin, reveals that he shouldn't have messed with the president's cousin of the group and asks why he didn't avoid the case like everyone else. Blaming Hyungjin's stubbornness, the man says this is what he got for it. Hyungjin then questions why their organization, the National Intelligence Service, the NIS, is involved and asks if their task isn't to protect the country. The hooded man explains that Hyungjin is gravely mistaken. Their job isn't to protect the country, he said while holding the knife. It's to protect their president ending his life. After saying this, the hooded man orders his men to clean up the scene, meaning they plan to burn Hyunjin's body with gasoline. As Hyunjin's consciousness slowly drifts away, the scene shifts to an ancient palace, a courtroom belonging to Emperor Yomra, one of the rulers of the underworld in Korean mythology. Inside the courtroom, the emperor, with a commanding tone, comments that Hyungjin died before his time, causing one of the court officials to agree and question what they should do. Yomra wonders how to handle it since Hyungjin died without having a body, which is problematic. Besides the unexpected death, Hyungjin is someone who hasn't died before. Another court official, with his head lowered, mentions that they sent Hyungjin to Earth because of its corruption, and it would be problematic if he returns as he is. Yomra waves his hand, indicating he already knows this. Looking at what seems like Hyunjin's soul, Yomra wonders what they can do. After some thinking, the emperor concludes that they need a different approach, an expedient solution since they are out of options. The whole court is astonished, questioning if the emperor plans to send Hyunjin to the past, stating it would be inadvisable. The direct official informs Yomra that the other gods will not like this idea, but Yomra is prepared to face the consequences. The official explains that regression might not help Hyunjin much, but Yomra quickly agrees, stating he knows and that's why he will give Hyunjin his power to assist him this time. Yomra raises his hand, glowing with different waves of energy, and commands Hyunjin's soul to go forth. Immediately, Hyunjin's soul ascends to the sky and out of the dimension, while Yomra inwardly hopes Hyunjin might survive this time. Suddenly, Hyunjin abruptly opens his eyes as if waking from a long nightmare, accidentally smashing his head on the top bunk. Holding his head in agony, he hears someone asking if he is stupid. Frightened by the dark expression of the figure, it turns out to be his elder sister, Hyuna. She reminds Hyunjin that it's been a month and wonders how his head is still okay after hitting it so many times. Hyunjin, calling her name, asks if she is still alive. She frowns, thinking Hyunjin has lost it, not forgetting to mention she is 17 and still healthy, while Hyunjin, bewildered, realizes he is currently 15 years old. Wondering if he can't do basic math, she instructs him to go to sleep, which he immediately agrees to. As Hyunjin lays on his bed, he wonders if his death was just a dream. He vividly remembers it, clenching his chest and wondering what's happening. The scene shifts to the following day. Both siblings prepare to leave for school, not forgetting to say goodbye to their parents. Hyuna, enthusiastic, tells him to keep up, reminding him she won't take responsibility if they arrive at school late. Lost in thought, Hyunjin looks at his palm and name tag on his uniform, realizing he is back in middle school and wondering what is happening. What interests him is that Hyuna is alive. Hyunjin explains that his sister didn't have the best life, She married a popular boy from school who wasn't a good husband. They had 2 kids and ended in divorce after an accident took the children. She decided to move to Japan for a quiet life but died in a tsunami, and her body was never recovered. At this moment, Hyuna is alive, and they are both walking to school. The idea hits him like truck-kun that he has this memory, which is strange, but he realizes that she will meet her future husband today, who is around. The no-good bastard will destroy her future. Unsure if this is a dream or reality, Hyunjin decides to check for himself, dashing off while Hyuna calls his name, asking where he is going. After running for some time, Hyunjin is a bit out of breath but remains determined to find the bastard. Just then, he hears something that catches his attention. Sneaking a glance, he finally finds the guy and recognizes him as Jo Hyukwoo, who is bullying a weaker student. Excited, Hyunjin thinks if this is real, this is his chance to change everything. Seeing Jo Hyukwoo and his friend bullying and asking the weaker student when he became an idiot, the weaker one tries to tell them he doesn't have money. However, the bully makes it clear that he wants the money, or else the kid will be beaten up. The guy refused, stating he doesn't have any money today and promises to get some tomorrow, while Jo Hyukwoo wonders if he has lost it. Now stomping on the poor guy, Jo Hyukwoo makes it clear that if he wants it, he should do it, and not make excuses. Meanwhile, Hyunjin watches the whole thing, thinking that at this rate, the guy might end up in a hospital. Our boy can't help but curse his sister's future boyfriend, calling him a piece of trash. Next we see the name tag of the victim. Back at home at night, our boy thinks of a possible solution, knowing he can't let this one slide. Looking at his plans scribbled on paper, planning to split Jo Hyukwoo and his sister. Biting his pen, he comments that he needs to prevent them from being together in order to change the future. While brainstorming, something in the waistband catches his attention. Picking it up, he smiles mischievously, realizing it's a love letter to his sister after reading it out loud. Our boy wonders who was the poor guy that decided to make a fool of himself. But looking at the name Park Gwang-sik, his amusement faded. After some time, the realization dawns on him. He immediately realizes it was the bullied kid. Also understands why the guy felt familiar. Because in the future, the guy became a prosecutor known as the Grim Reaper of school violence. He had no mercy when it came to school violence. In the end, he locked up all the people that bullied him for life. Now everything made sense, and our boy decided to look into it. The next day at school, the same routine continues, but this time there were 4 students. Hyunjin didn't just watch but filmed the whole thing in 4K, thanking his dad for the camera. After some time, he decided it was enough and moved to his next step of his plan. Our boy is excited. He can't wait to fix his sister's life and deal with this bastard of a bully. The scene shifts to a signpost of a cram school in the city. We see our bullied friend Park Gwang-sik coming out and grumbling about school life and being beaten up by the bullies continually. Suddenly, our boy cuts him off by calling Park's name, addressing him as a senior, leaving him puzzled and questioning our boy's identity. When he asks about our boy's business with him, Hyunjin heads straight to the point, stating he came because of Jo Hyukwoo. Immediately, Park becomes alarmed and on edge. Sensing his tense expression, he assures him he didn't come under the bully's orders and expresses how much he hates the guy. Hyunjin also points out that Jo Hyukwoo was hitting on his sister despite being a scumbag. Park is a bit puzzled by the word sister, but our boy reminds him by calling her name, making the guy flustered. Then, with a more serious tone, Hyunjin asks if Park still likes his sister, talk about being direct. Park doesn't hide it and agrees, noting that if he said no, he would be lying. Our boy, excited, holds Park's hand, asking if he would like to go on a date with her sometime. But the guy shows a defeated expression, explaining to Hyunjin that she is already with Jo Hyukwoo, adding that the guy might kill him if he finds out. However, our boy has a plan, stating both of them shouldn't fight with fists but rather use their heads. And then he whispers his plan to Park. Listening to our boy's words, Park Gwang-sik becomes more surprised. Astonished, he comments it was nice and asks how our boy knew all this. Well, he can't say he's from the future, so the best excuse was that he saw it in a dream. Back at school, Park Wang-sik's bullies continue their activity, beating the poor guy. Now annoyed and fed up, Park tells them to stop, adding that he's dirt poor and has no money. You see, the bullies weren't just taking pocket change. They always took $50 to $100 daily, and now the sum taken is around $6,000. But Jo Hyuk-woo isn't impressed, wondering what he gains by calculating the amount, and why he is ranting. Now closing the distance with an intimidating aura, he comments that Park must have lost his mind and reveals he's part of a gang called Primo Gang. However, he is stunned as Park states he shouldn't make serious dry jokes, calling them third-rate school bullies. Jo Hyuk-woo, in a fit of rage, delivers a punch. As he agonizes in pain, Jo Hyuk-woo informs him that the Primo Gang has 20 members and ending him will be easier than finding a place to smoke. Now adding they will kindly teach him a lesson. Park could only endure the pain from being hit continuously, thinking to himself that the time will come for his revenge. The scene shifts to the teacher's office. Park explains the entire situation to the teacher, from the money stolen to the part about the bullies being in a gang, but the teacher's advice was for him to endure it. When Park asks what he meant by that, the teacher, or rather the fool, struggles to come up with a reasonable explanation. However, Park understands the hidden message. The teacher wants him to deal with his personal problem alone and not drag people into it. At the police station, Park requests protection. He was asking because neither his parents nor teachers would listen or believe him, no matter how much he asked. But the officer dismissed him, adding he shouldn't disturb the police with small issues, and if he comes next time, he will be thrown into the cell for interference with police duties. Now shifting to our boy in Park, he asks if it was enough, not forgetting to mention all adults are the same. But our boy, raising a finger, exclaims they are almost done and only one last thing remains. The scene changes to a group of people clearly looking for Park for snitching to the head counselor and planning to teach him a lesson. Spotting the residence with Park's family nameplate, Jo Hyuk-woo, with a face mask, shows excitement and orders his boys. Next, they position and climb the fence and enter the premises of Park's house, spotting him in the process. Park is immediately stunned to see him. Raising his bat high and pointing it at Park inside the house, Jo Hyuk-woo declares with a menacing expression that he has found him. The window is smashed before Park could process what was happening. Now this is going too far. Anyway, he enters inside. Jo Hyuk-woo apologizes for surprising him. With a sly expression, he reminds Park of his previous warning. Park is visibly shaken as Jo Hyuk-woo continues, saying he promised to end him if he continued messing around. Park Wang-sik, on the floor of the living room, tells Jo Hyuk-woo to wait and asks what he plans to do. On the other hand, Hyuk-woo is already mid-swing, expressing his desire to end him for snitching on them. Park can only brace himself for the incoming hit. Luckily, the house alarm sounds, annoying Jo Hyuk-woo with the bad timing. Before leaving, Hyuk-woo points the bat at Park, stating he's lucky, and they will finish it at school tomorrow. With that, the gang of fools leaves, grumbling about the hassle. However, with a determined look, Park mutters Jo Hyuk-woo's name while cursing. Suddenly, his moment is interrupted by his phone ringing. Answering the call, it turns out to be Hyunjin on the other side, and they decide it's time to put an end to Jo Hyuk-woo. The next day, the Park family is dismayed by the destruction caused by the bullies. Park's dad comments on how bullying their son wasn't enough, asking if they should be called bullies or gangsters at this point. He suggests they all go to school to settle it, but Hyunjin dismisses the idea, pointing out the school will only make them write an apology letter, 2 pages at best. When Park's dad asks what they should do, as they can't let it slide, Hyunjin explains that he and Park have already made a plan. After all, they already know this will eventually happen. Hyunjin clarifies, stating they will send the fools to a place worse than hell. The scene shifts to the Supreme Prosecutor's office. It's also called the State Attorney in the States, where they decide to file a complaint. The man at the desk advises them to do it at the police station. Hyunjin immediately cuts him off, stating they know that already and they can also do the same at the State Attorney. The man, visibly annoyed, sighs and asks what they want, and if they are filing a kid-fighting complaint, thinking to himself how childish this seems. Hyunjin adopted a different demeanor, starting dropping legal bombshells like habitual, special intimidation, in other words bullying, special extortion, which is related to stealing, and habitual special violence. I think I'm going to be a lawyer after this. Regardless, the guy is immediately wide-eyed, but Hyunjin isn't done. He continues with residential trespassing and damage to personal property. Still cooking. He passes the folder to the man at the desk, which contains evidence in the form of photos. Now with a serious look, Hyunjin says there's one more thing. The man grew curious, asking what that could be. It turns out to be a written accusation. The guy is shocked at how detailed it is and asks if they plan to report to the police. As in Korea, a written accusation here means reporting a crime you're not necessarily a victim of. Both Hyunjin and Park agree with a firm yes. Let's shift to Park heading home after cram school. Suddenly, he glances slightly as someone calls out, and without looking, we know it's Jo Hyuk-woo and his gang. One comments he finally arrived, while another is pissed he took his time to come. Jo Hyuk-woo remarks it's been a while and talks about how Park filed a complaint against him. They then grab Park Gwang-sik, leaving his glasses behind. The scene shifts to a restricted area in the mountains, perfect for their intentions. Park is pushed like a rag doll and falls with a thud. Jo Hyuk-woo, holding a box cutter, asks if Park thought he would let it slide after reporting and filing a complaint against him. He plans to make this place Park's resting place, and starts by playing with him a bit. Park tells him to stop, asking what he is doing. Suddenly, Jo Hyuk-woo pauses as he notices a flash of light from behind, and a voice telling him to stop loudly. It turns out to be guys in blue telling them to freeze and drop their weapons, also warning to open fire. Jo Hyuk-woo is immediately petrified, wondering how the police found them. Park Gwang-sik shows him his phone with a mocking laugh, revealing he has been in a call with the police the entire time. Jo Hyuk-woo, frightened to the point of his soul leaving his body, wonders if Park did what he thinks. Park confirms, explaining that not only has he been in a call with the police, and since it's recorded the guy is ultimately screwed. Not just that, even the conversation with the teacher was recorded. The foolish teacher is sweating as Hyunjin points out the teacher's failure to meet their obligations by denying requests for help. The accessories, meaning someone who aids in a crime, to the bullying were overlooked, pointing out the serious offense and trouble the teacher is in. The teacher helplessly asks what can be done and what Hyunjin wants. Just then, Hyunjin checks his phone and announces to the teacher that Jo Hyuk-woo has been arrested and charged with attempted murder, leaving the teacher wide-eyed and questioning. Hyunjin calmly explains that Jo Hyuk-woo was caught by the police while trying to murder Park in the mountains, indicating how serious the case was. Hyunjin then asks once more what the teacher will do about it, and the teacher facepalms and asks for Hyunjin's help. Hyunjin states he needs the teacher to tell the truth and to bring all the victims of the bullies to help file another report. The teacher immediately agrees. The scene shifts to a cafe with Hyunjin and Park chatting. Park is concerned about Jo Hyuk-woo and asks what will happen to him. Hyunjin explains that Jo Hyuk-woo will be imprisoned for at least 10 years. Park is shocked as the narrator mentions he now wears contacts since he lost his glasses. Also, the complaint filed by Hyunjin contains the exact crimes, and the police must conduct a special investigation for each one. When that happens, Jo Hyuk-woo won't be able to get off easy. Hyunjin points out they filed individual complaints for each crime. Here's what it means. If there are multiple victims, let's say 50, each victim's case will be treated separately as an offense. Even if each student files a small offense, which could lead to a 4-month sentence, it will pile up to 200 months. The court usually groups similar cases to avoid over-sentencing, but this results in a high degree of punishment. This is separate from settling with victims financially as compensation. In a few words, we know Jo Hyuk-woo is totally screwed. Park asks if this was Hyunjin's plan from the start, using the school, teachers, and police. Hyunjin affirms, stating it was a fun trick he learned from a friend. When Park asks about the identity of the person, Hyunjin hinted at him. However, Park is clueless. While Hyunjin thinks he learned all this from him, the grim reaper of school violence in the future. Suddenly, someone arrives at the cafe. It turns out to be none other than our dear waifu Hyunjin's elder sister. Park is flustered and surprised to see her. Hyungjin remarks that she took her time to arrive, teasing her. She fires back, wondering how a penniless brat like her little brother is eating ice cream he can't afford. Immediately, Park seizes the opportunity to introduce himself, stuttering a little. She, on the other hand, wonders about his identity. Hyungjin, like a wingman, formally introduces Park as his senior and the one who helps him study. They attend the same school. Hyungjin further explains Park is the top of her class and asks why his sister didn't recognize him. We already sense the chemistry as she quickly introduces herself. Park is pleased to meet her, and it becomes a date. Hyungjin loves what he sees. His small project of saving his elder sister was a success. Later that evening, at Hyungjin's house, his sister is searching for something, almost swearing she left it there. Hyungjin, however, comments she should check in her study book. She immediately scolds him for eavesdropping and tells him to go to sleep. Lying down with a smile, Hyungjin thinks it's really peaceful. Oh, it's the red envelope we've seen in the previous chapter. The next chapter begins with our boy's sister receiving a message from Park Gwang-sik, asking her out. She is thrilled that he texted back, and the timing is perfect. She agrees to have dinner with him. However, our boy feels somewhat annoyed by the continuous messaging that causes her phone to vibrate. When he comments on the distraction, she teasingly replies, asking if our boy will be responsible if she misses a text. Despite his irritation, our boy is inwardly pleased, knowing he successfully altered the future for his sister. Soon, it's dinner time at their home. Both siblings thank their parents for the food. Our boy can't help but compliment his mom on how delicious the meal is. Unexpectedly, his dad asks about school. Watching our boy devour his meal, he inquires if something interesting is happening. Our boy realizes this question is because he skipped some classes to help Park. He tries to come up with a reasonable explanation, but his dad reassures him that they are not trying to scold him, they just need to know the reason. His mom agrees. Our boy ponders deeply, knowing he can't tell them the truth and doesn't have anyone or remembers anyone to befriend at school. Finally, he confessed to his parents that he doesn't want to go to school anymore. His dad abruptly places his chopsticks on the table with a loud thud, asking with a serious tone if he implying he knows everything in the curriculum and hence doesn't need school. Our boy nods, indicating that he already knows what the teachers will teach, while his parents display unsure expressions. If only they knew he is actually one of the best lawyers. He firmly explains that he doesn't need to learn what he already knows. His mom suddenly asks if he is being bullied, while his dad assures him they can talk about anything. With a calm demeanor, our boy inadvertently declares he wants to become a lawyer. His family is astonished by his sudden declaration. Well, in Korea, you don't need to attend college to take the judiciary exam to be a lawyer. One just needs to complete a law course, which is not an issue for our boy. He reassures his family not to worry, as he has everything figured out, including his high school diploma. Despite his reassurance, his mom is still unsure. Just then, our boy raises a finger, requesting a condition. He will write and pass both the high school diploma exam and the CSAT, College Scholastic Ability Test, a highly difficult exam administered once a year. Basically, it's an exam to enter college in the same year. This statement puts his dad in a tight spot, while his mom tries to comfort him. His dad finally reassures him, stating that though he is worried, any failure will just be a learning experience, and encourages our boy to give it his best shot. The scene shifts to our boy's school, where he is seen studying in class. One of his classmates wonders why he is studying so hard, asking him to join them at the cafeteria. He declines, stating he is busy and they should go ahead. The classmate comments that it's not even exam season yet. He quickly tells them to be quiet, pointing out that he doesn't have much time left before the CSAT exam. They are all shocked about how he will take the exam despite being in his second junior year. The scene then shifts to another building, where our boy is studying hard for the upcoming exam. Looking at some past questions, he realizes they are a bit difficult and different from his previous attempt. Suddenly, he feels a weird sensation and stands up abruptly. He questions the feeling. Looking at other people studying, He swears he is sensing something off but couldn't pinpoint it. Time passes quickly. We see our boy taking a can drink from a vending machine. As he opens it, he believes the sensation is as a result of studying overtime. After taking a drink, he concludes that he is probably just exhausted. He tosses the empty can into a bin, but it misses and hits the rim. He sighs. Well, it seemed like the day was off. As he approaches the bin, he discovers another can and questions if it was difficult to throw a can away. Immediately upon touching the can, he feels the same sensation again and sees someone, leaving him in shock. He quickly drops the can. Looking at his palm, he wonders what is happening to him. He tries to calm down, thinking it is just a hallucination. He attempts to pick up the can again, commenting that it is all in his mind. But then, the sensation triggers again, and he sees a guy in white chatting with his friend. The guy says he wishes to have fun at a cafe rather than study for a boring exam. Our boy, still holding the can, wonders why he is seeing such things. Walking away in the hallway, he cites the feeling to tiredness and thinks it is just his imagination. He returns to his desk, thinking he needs to get back to studying because he has a lot to cover. But the moment he touches his desk, the sensation, or rather his ability, is triggered again, leaving him with a confused and tense expression. This time, he sees someone studying, and the guy is really motivated. Noticing the scene is somehow related to the past, our boy wonders why this is happening to him. Next, we see him asking a worker about the person who previously studied at his desk. The worker replies it was a chubby fellow who failed the CSAT exam twice but eventually got into one of the best medical schools. Our boy asks suspiciously if the guy wore glasses. The older man is surprised and curious if our boy knows the fellow. Back home, our boy decides he needs to do some research. He types frantically, looking up the word psychometry, and learned it was the ability to see past events or memories tied to objects. Our boy, deep in thought, remarks that this must be an ability he got as he regressed, but he wonders if he should be happy about it. Then, he shifts his attention to an object next to him. Realizing it is his sister's wallet, he decides to test his ability. After touching the wallet, he is amazed to see numbers. Curious, he decides to go for the number 1 and reaches out to it. Our boy is immediately stunned by what he sees. It turns out to be a rated content between Park and his sister. He watches them with a sour expression, thinking to himself that it has not been long since they met, and they are already making such moves. Now, he apologizes inwardly for potentially destroying Park's future as a prosecutor. However, thinking about Jo Hyuk-woo, he reassures himself that it was better this way. After all, if he hadn't intervened, she might have ended up with that fool. Mid-thought, he pauses. He wonders about the numbers he saw in his vision. Could they represent a date and time? Excited by this possibility, he realizes the combinations are limited, making it easier to decipher. After 3 hours of test runs, our boy comes to a staggering conclusion. Firstly, he can only see and read memories when he touches an object. Secondly, powerful memories are more visible, while unrelated memories either fade away or become hazy. Thirdly, picking a specific time or period is possible only if there are multiple or strong feelings from that specific time. And lastly, he needs accurate information about the specific moment to see unimportant memories. This was the extent of his understanding of his powers for now. Later, his sister arrives home, announcing that she already had dinner. No surprise there. Our boy makes a comment that catches her attention. When she questions him about it, he deflects, teasing her about her hearing. Then, with a sly grin, he asks about her first kiss. Startled, she wonders if Park told him something, but our boy casually reveals it was just a guess, but he hit the mark. However, his accuracy makes her threaten him. He cheekily suggests a $10 bribe to keep his mouth shut, leaving her fuming. I really like this sibling relationship. Later, we see our boy in bed. His ability is somehow affecting his focus on studies. Wondering if his powers are related to concentration, he decides to experiment. The next day at school, the homeroom teacher announces the end of the test and looks forward to seeing them tomorrow. Some students are excited about finishing. Our boy is excited too, his ability really came in handy during the test. However, some classmates interrupt his thoughts, inviting him to play a newly launched game at a cafe. Intrigued, he mentally thanks his abilities for making studying easier and decides to have some fun. As he's packing his stuff, he notices someone accidentally drop a case. Immediately, he picks it up and hands it back to the owner, a girl named Yoon Myung. She thanks him politely, and as she reaches for the case, his ability is triggered. Puzzled, she reminds him to let go. Collecting himself, he does. As she walks away, she says she'll see him later. Our boy is left wondering what he saw. Realizing he needs to verify it immediately, he apologizes to his classmates, saying he can't attend the gaming session. They express confusion, asking if he needed to study or if he had lady troubles and now a girlfriend. Well, that's the problem, and it's something he can't overlook. The scene shifts to our boy waiting in the hallway, spotted by his homeroom teacher. Approaching closely, the teacher asks why the top student of his class is waiting. Concerned, our boy states he's waiting for Yoon Myung, who has been in the office for over an hour. The teacher knocks, calling out Mr. Lee and announcing that our boy is waiting for Yoon Myung. Mr. Lee, opening slightly surprised, asks what Mr. Park, the teacher, wants. He is even more surprised to see our boy. However, our boy apologizes, explaining they have somewhere important to be, and it will be problematic if they are late. Mr. Lee reluctantly agrees, calling Yoon Myung out. She responds timidly while Mr. Lee advises her not to slack in her studies despite our boy being her boyfriend, which she agrees to. Our boy notices the way Mr. Lee's hand grabs Yoon Myung's shoulder, expressing his gratitude for giving her extra lessons. Her facial expression reveals the true meaning of his extra lessons. Our boy watches with a sharp gaze, thinking he has found his next victim. Later, while on the swings, Yoon Myung is curious as to why he waited for her, pointing out that he even went as far as lying. Our boy, stuttering, tries to explain, but she cuts him off, teasing him about how the top student of their class can sometimes stutter. Now remembering he didn't interact much with her in his previous life, our boy senses her curiosity. She wants to know what's on his mind. Well, he doesn't know how he should even start. Startled, she exclaims that nothing happened and questions what he really meant. With a calculating tone, he points out her reaction, saying he didn't mention anything specific. Cornered, she begins to tear up. Seeing her cry, our boy feels sad and remorseful. He gently assures her she can tell him the truth. She begins to explain her dad's alcoholism and gambling addiction, mentioning she couldn't ask anyone for help. When he inquires about her mom, with tears rolling down, she reveals that her mom passed away. Understanding the dire situation, our boy realizes reporting to the police would be futile. He then asks if Mr. Lee ever lays hands on her or does anything bad. She explains that thanks to our boy today, the teacher calls her every day, making her scared. Understanding, he gritted his teeth, like how Mr. Lee can call himself a teacher while doing such awful things. He decides to help, adding that he can't do this alone and will need her assistance. The following day, in Hyungjin's classroom, Mr. Lee punishes him for his recent actions. Even the students are worried about Mr. Lee's frequent punishments. The shameless teacher justifies his discipline by claiming it was because our boy was solving higher grade math problems in class. Our boy explains that it's because there's nothing left for him to learn, which touches a nerve for Mr. Lee. What follows is a barrage of caning, and our boy can only endure the pain. At the school cafeteria, our boy notices something important. Mr. Lee doesn't call Yoon Myung during recess. He promises to look out for her. As school ends, Hyungjin lets out a big yawn, relieved that the day is finally over. He then notices a student approaching Yoon Myung, passing along a message from Mr. Lee wanting to see her before she goes home. Watching this, he curses Mr. Lee under his breath. Hyungjin checks his watch, wondering what's taking so long when Mr. Park, his homeroom teacher, shows up again, surprised to see him. Mr. Park asks if he is waiting for Yoon Myung again, and our boy affirms that she is a bit late. Mr. Park cheerfully remarks about them being a couple, causing our boy to chuckle slightly. Next, Mr. Park goes into the teacher's office and requests Mr. Lee to let Yoon Myung go already since our boy is waiting for her. The guy is visibly annoyed by our boy's persistence, but Mr. Park continues fearing Hyunjin might be petrified if he keeps waiting. However, Mr. Lee pulls a false smile, stating he's done with her already. Then he turns to Yoon Myung, questioning what kind of relationship she has with our boy and if they are dating. Before she leaves, he advises her to be careful, as he's watching everything. She trembles in fear but remains silent. Outside the office, our boy senses someone approaching. Seeing Yoon Myung, he asks if it was hard enduring what she went through, still receiving silence from her. He praises her for holding up and suggests they leave. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee watches them walk out of the school premises from his office window. As they walk, our boy suggests they grab something spicy. When she mentions she doesn't like spicy dishes, he suggests trying it anyway as it helps relieve stress. The next day arrives, and our boy is dumbstruck by Mr. Lee's actions, while other classmates express concern, noting it has become routine. Mr. Lee, enraged, calls our boy out, as whispers grow louder suggesting Mr. Lee's recent actions are because he discovered our boy was dating Yoon Myung, surprising the other classmates. Approaching Mr. Lee, our boy states he was requested, but Mr. Lee tells him not to glare at him. With a serious look, our boy glances at the mop stick in Mr. Lee's hand and asks if he plans to hit him with that. Surprised by his boldness, Mr. Lee is speechless. Our boy, emitting a confident aura, explains that hitting him with the mop stick constitutes as special violence, and using a dangerous object, urging him to think carefully. Seeing no reaction from the teacher, our boy announces his departure. Later that day, the couple walks together, and she apologizes, but our boy reassures her it's not her fault and that Mr. Lee is just a bad man. She thanks him but questions what he plans to do, fearing his life might turn into a living hell if this continues. Our boy agrees, stating that sticking with her has its limitations. However, he understands that someone as bad as Mr. Lee will definitely call her after graduation because they don't easily let their victims go. Hyunjin pauses as she explains he can stop whenever he wants. Our boy tells her to listen closely, pointing out that the situation wasn't hopeless. Puzzled, she asks what he meant. He explains that the method he has in mind would work only if she's prepared to see it through to the end. Looking at her trembling hand, he reassures her, noting she doesn't have to do it if she doesn't want to. She immediately apologizes, stating she can't do it, her head low. He smiles, telling her he understands and there's no need to apologize. Still, she apologizes once more and then reveals that she believes she isn't the first victim, explaining that when Mr. Lee feels excited, he sometimes calls out names of other girls. Our boy is shocked, noting that the man is worse than a pig. He gently places his hand on hers, making her wide-eyed. After all, they are the same age. Nonetheless, he thanks her for sharing and should leave everything to him. Next, we see an institution called the Saint of Single Mothers. Basically, the institution was built for single ladies who failed to get married in Korea. Our boy, looking at the building, thinks about how much of a scumbag Mr. Lee is, having 4 victims, 2 of whom are college students. One of the victims is a part of this institution. Inside the building, in the counselor's room, Hyunjin asks if he can meet someone named Miss Kang. The lady there stops him, pointing out that meeting with males is prohibited because all mothers hate them. If that's the case, our boy understands but asks to leave his contact. After entering his name, he asks the lady to pass on a message for him, asking if Miss Kang has any desire for revenge. Time passes slowly. We see someone holding a cup, asking if our boy was looking for her. She comments on how young he is. With that, Miss Kang Soyoung asks our boy what business he has with her. Our boy mentions the teacher's name, Lee Gyuseon, and states that he came here because of him. Shaken, she asks if another person ended up a victim. He quickly affirms, adding that her mom is dead, her dad is a drunkard, and the girl is a nice person. She understands cases like this, if reported, her dad would just ask for money. On the contrary, if she reports him personally, she'll be seen as someone who gets a payoff. Understanding, Miss Kang must have a reason to meet him, and if she's part of this institution, It means she's ready to raise her child and will definitely need money. So, he proposes for her to help report the teacher in return for finding her child's biological father and getting child support. After all, he's no average lawyer. She doesn't need to pay any attorney fees, which shocks her. He mentions that lawyers usually don't say this, but anyone can represent themselves in civil cases, although the entire process is challenging. And the reason lawyers remain silent about it is the potential loss of jobs, plus seeking financial gain or profit isn't against the law. He further explains it's illegal to charge someone for a legal case without qualifications as lawyer. She asks what she can do, obviously ready to get that juicy child support. Hyungjin reassures her they'll follow the process step by step and concludes their deal with a handshake, promising she won't regret it. She agrees she'll be in our boy's care. Reflecting, he thinks it's time for Mr. Lee to experience something worse than hell. In the next scene, Hyungjin hands a can drink to Yoon Myung. Afterward, he gets down to business by asking what Mr. Lee told her. She immediately reveals that he wants to see her every weekend, making our boy bewildered. Now teary eyes, our boy tells her to listen to him. He explains that to get out of this situation, they first need to deal with her dad. She explains with a trembling voice that her dad is always drunk and can't be reasoned with. Our boy suggests she needs to be ready to protect herself, but she asks how she can do it, pointing out that no one wants to hear her out. Hyungjin, informing her that isn't the case, leaves her dumbstruck. He assures her that as long as she trusts him, the situation isn't impossible. The next day, our boy investigates in the area, asking questions about Yoon Myung's dad. First, the lady in red reports that the poor guy is always so drunk, and she feels sorry for his daughter. Other people mention that Mr. Yoon will eventually get what he deserves because he owes money. The scene shifts to the state attorney's office in the city. We meet the same man at the desk. He asks what Hyungjin wants, wondering if he is filing another complaint. Our boy affirms that he is studying law and helping people for free. The man is surprised to hear he is studying law by himself, and even more shocked to see the report is perfect with nothing missing. Yoon Myung suddenly chimes in wanting to submit a report that proves her identity. The man is impressed, mentally noting Yoon Myung is underage and has no ID card, so this was all prepared in advance. The author explains that our boy's case involves a Quasi-Incompetence Act. Apparently it limits the actions of people who can't live normally and involves the adult guardian system, meaning a judge appoints a guardian for someone with physical or mental limitations. Our boy asks if they are done. Later that day, Yoon Myung's dad is furious that she filed a complaint against him, asking her if she has a death wish. Meanwhile, our boy, present at the scene, wonders what's taking so long. Finally, the people he was waiting for arrive. A man in black insists that Yoon's dad needs treatment, but the man struggles. Even the police are involved. Her father, clearly drunk, threatens everyone nearby, wondering if they wish to die and claiming he doesn't need any treatment. In a fit of rage, he breaks an alcohol bottle and threatens anyone who comes close, promising to send them to the afterlife. The man in black, acting as the legal representative, informs the police that Yoon's dad is threatening people and requests he be restrained. The police fire electric darts, electrocuting him and causing him to lose consciousness and fall to the ground. The man in black orders that Yoon Myung be brought out. She comes out scared and teary-eyed. The legal representative promises to make an official report, requesting her father be hospitalized in a mental institution due to the danger and violence he poses. Just then, she notices our boy watching with a calm expression. Later, at the park, she thanks our boy. As they sit on the swing, she comments on how everything went as he predicted, and he affirms this. With her head low, she asks what it means that the court classified her dad as incompetent. He explains it is similar to the Quasi case from before but stronger, which surprises her. In other words, her father is removed as her legal guardian. He reminds her that they still have one more target to deal with, Mr. Lee. He explains that 4 of Mr. Lee's victims have decided to file a complaint, and this time there will be no escape. With a determined aura, he asks her to come with him, promising to protect her to the end. She agrees, thanking him in the process. The next moment, We see Mr. Lee knocking on Yoon Myung's door at night, pleading for her to open up. Well, we already know the bastard is worse than a pig. Apparently, Hyungjin had Yoon Myung stay at his house. He predicted Mr. Lee would visit her. People like him will eventually come to find their victims. She asked if Mr. Lee would visit other victims too, and our boy affirmed. Hyungjin, resting his chin, wishes the police would take this case more seriously. He acknowledges the police usually give out contact information about victims, but since the system is still underdeveloped, it will eventually improve in the future. He reassures her with a smile, telling her not to worry and that he will take care of everything. The scene shifts to our boy's dad having a conversation with him. His dad demands to know why a teacher is visiting their house continuously. Now that's shocking. Our boy keeps his composure as his dad presses for answers, adding that he knows Hyungjin isn't someone to do stuff without a reason. Our boy decides to tell his father the truth. The next moment, his father slams his fist on the table, enraged, wondering how Mr. Lee can call himself a teacher. Our boy tries to calm him down, but his father fights back, asking why he should let it slide, pointing out he has a daughter too. Our boy assures him that this is his battle, not to mention he is well prepared, so his father shouldn't stress himself. His dad, now calm but visibly worried, decides to trust our boy, who thanks him. However, his dad suggests a condition. But before that, we slide to the next day. Yoon Myung and Hyungjin are walking and chatting. She comments on his parents being good people, but surprised when he informs her that she will be staying in a hotel from onwards. However, she understands, voicing that she felt like a burden to his family and made them uncomfortable. But he tells her not to be stupid, they actually enjoy her company. Recounting his conversation with his father the other day, his dad's condition was that she stay in a hotel, which he will cover. He protested, noting it wasn't fine to leave her by herself. His dad reassured him to hear his reasoning. He pointed out that Yoon Myung seemed anxious due to Mr. Lee visits and believed she was a burden to their family. Basically, his father wants the poor girl to relax. In the present, he explains this to Yoon Myung, asking if she understands now. She lowers her head and apologizes for jumping into stupid conclusions. Understanding, he reassures her, reminding her they're close to the finish line, also promising to protect her at all costs. The scene shifts to the principal's office at school, where an emergency meeting is being held. Mr. Lee is enraged by our boy's accusation of him committing such an act against a student. Our boy, sitting on a couch opposite them, asks if he said something wrong. The teacher attempts to explain the gravity of the situation. Then, our boy informs Mr. Lee not to tarnish the good names of teachers with his actions. Mr. Lee can only curse at him in rage, while the teacher continues trying to pacify the situation. Turning his attention to the principal, he states that there are 4 victims and questions why the school didn't take action. The principal replies that none of the allegations were substantial enough to warrant action. The principal then suggests settling the situation with an apology to Miss Yoon Myung. It seems the principal intends to protect the teacher at all costs and finds the loyalty misguided. The principal, an old man in his 70s, suggests settling the matter once and for all. Closing his eyes and sighing, our boy comments that if that's what they want, they leave him no choice. He pulls out an envelope and states that they will soon receive a call from the court. He explains that he wants to inform them of what's coming ahead of time. The principal is visibly alarmed and bewildered. He continues, the document in his hand is a restraining order issued by the court. He states that Mr. Lee, the assailant, must stay 200 meters away from both him and the victim, Yoon Myung. The principal's eyes widen in shock, almost as if they might pop out of their sockets. Continuing, our boy informs them that the restraining order is effective immediately upon issuance. Mr. Lee glares at him with gritted teeth, his blood pressure visibly surging, as he curses loudly. Without hesitation, our boy demands that Mr. Lee leave and maintain a distance of 200 meters. The principal, trembling and enraged, mentally accuses our boy of taking things too far. But before he can finish, the principal interrupts, pointing out that Mr. Lee's actions are indefensible. Then, the principal turns on our boy, accusing him of overstepping by pushing to have a teacher removed from the school. Little did the principal know, our boy wasn't finished. With a calm yet authoritative tone, he counters by pointing out that Mr. Lee's refusal to follow the restraining order is an immediate violation. Next, our boy dials the police. He states that he's calling because the restraining order has been violated and adds that he feels scared and threatened. Moments later, the police arrive at the principal's office. Our boy advises Mr. Lee to comply with the restraining order. As Mr. Lee is dragged out, he desperately calls for the principal to intervene, now facing the principal, and asks if he will suspend the teacher or if he should file accusations for negligence in school administration. The principal, visibly anxious, asks what that would entail. He didn't want to waste time explaining. The principal's duty is to protect students from harm. By aiding Mr. Lee, the principal is failing in that responsibility. He calmly but firmly adds that if the principal doesn't suspend Mr. Lee, he will file a civil complaint for maladministration of the school district. The principal, visibly shaken, wonders how someone so young, only 15 years old, can be this resolute. Finally, the principal relents and agrees to suspend Mr. Lee immediately. With that, the meeting concludes. The next scene shows our boy and Yoon Myung sitting in a park. He expresses concern about her well-being. She reassures him that she's doing well, thanks to his support, which makes him feel grateful. She brings up how the teachers at school now resent him because of her. Our boy dismisses her concerns, stating he has no business with them. She chuckles lightly. Like, are the teachers blind or just ignorant? Then, she informs him about a distant relative and mentions that she might be moving away. He is happy for her, encouraging her to embrace the change and reminding her not to forget him. Time passes, and the scene shifts to the police station. A cop wonders aloud why a student is present during the interrogation. Our boy, arms crossed, states that he's both a witness and a friend. The cop, indifferent, tells him to go home, as it isn't the day for his testimony. Scoffing internally, our boy suspects the cop has been bribed and wonders how to deal with this dirty cop. The interrogation begins. The cop asks a puzzling question, inquiring whether the victims did what Mr. Lee suggested or if he threatened them with a weapon. Both Miss Kong and Yoon Myung struggle to answer, hesitant and silent. The cop concludes that they must have complied with Mr. Lee's requests. Our boy, arms still crossed, watches intently before suddenly cutting him off. Irritated, the cop asks why he's interrupting. Stepping closer, our boy asks if he needs to remind the officer about interrogation guidelines, or if he has simply forgotten them. The cop is dumbstruck. Our boy calmly explains that interrogations involving explicit matters in public are forbidden. Also, victims have the right to request a female interrogator. Additionally, if the victim is underage, a child psychologist must be present to prevent trauma. Realizing his mistake, the cop blames it on overwork and agrees to their requests. Ms. Kong immediately requests a female officer, while Yoon Myung asks for a child psychologist. Time passes, and the scene shifts to the women's counseling office at the station. With their requests granted, the female interrogator asks our boy to wait outside the office. He agrees but asks if this will be an interrogation or an investigation. The female officer, confused, asks what he means. Our boy explains that if it's a simple victim investigation, he doesn't need to be present. However, victims have the right to request the presence of someone they trust for mental stability. Both Miss Kong and Yoon Myung request for him to stay, which irritates the female officer. Meanwhile, he notices the nameplate of the female officer and feels it's oddly familiar. Excusing himself, he claims he needs to use the restroom. As he walks away, he reflects on her name and decides to look it up. The revelation dawns on him, and he immediately remembers where he's seen the name before. Rushing back into the women's counseling office, he interrupts the interrogation. The female officer, Yoon Seok-sun, demands to know why he's making a fuss. With a firm tone, our boy states that she isn't qualified to handle the case. Our boy, face to face with the female officer, tells her once more that she is not qualified for the case. The child psychologist turns to the female officer, asking what is wrong. Holding a paper in his hand, our boy requests a change of officer, citing the background information he dug up. Yoon Sik-sun, observing this, wonders aloud about our boy's reasoning. Calmly, our boy explains that he noticed the officer's name and decided to conduct a background check. He discovered that the officer is a supporter and advocate for sexual offenders. Both Yoon and Miss Kang are shocked by this revelation. Realizing she has been caught, the officer tries to excuse herself, claiming it was a different case. However, our boy, annoyed, cuts her off, pointing out that it doesn't matter if it was a different case. It doesn't change what she said. A flashback reveals her words during the previous case. The girl got what she deserved. Kids these days are annoying. Back in the present, Yoon Sik-sun starts sweating bullets as our boy recounts the event, adding that he saw her exact statement in the news. Our boy presses further, questioning how she could call herself an officer in charge of sexual offenses. The child psychologist agrees with our boy, citing the possibility of such behavior recurring and demanding a different officer for the case. Our boy watches with satisfaction as the disgraced officer walks away. Time passes, and another female officer is assigned to the case. The psychologist requests the officer to proceed. Just then, our boy addresses Miss Kang as Big Sister, instructing her to record the session. Before she can reply, he asks the new officer if it's illegal for victims to record their sessions. The officer disagrees, surprising Miss Kang. The psychologist, on the other hand, compliments Miss Kang, saying she must be proud to have such a smart brother. She replies casually, "Of course," adding that it feels great to have a little lawyer of her own. After the event, she thanks our boy for his help, remarking that without him, they would have been in trouble multiple times. Our boy also thanks her for not giving up and believing in him, adding that they still have some matters to settle. The scene shifts to Mr. Lee on a phone call, pleading with a lawyer for help, as he doesn't have the funds at the moment. Realizing he's out of options, he begins regretting his life choices. You see, victims don't necessarily need to participate in trials as they're represented by the state prosecutor. However, offenders require a lawyer or must defend themselves. If they fail to do so, an adequate punishment will be imposed. The scene shifts again to a moving truck, signaling it's finally time for Yoon Myeon to move out. Our boy comments on how the law seems to favor Mr. Lee, but regardless, he'll face punishment for breaking it. Yoon Myeon avoids his gaze. She timidly asks if she could call him sometimes. He welcomes the idea and he'll be waiting for her call. He also reminds her to take good care of herself. Before leaving, she manages to give him a kiss. Our boy is momentarily stunned, clearly not expecting this. She bolts off before he can respond, telling the truck driver she's ready to go. In the vehicle, she smiles, staring at his figure in the mirror, thanking him for saving her from what could have been a hellish life. Mentally, she promises not to forget her lawyer as tears fill her eyes. Meanwhile, our boy is lost in thought, musing that a kiss wasn't bad as an attorney fee. His moment is short-lived as someone calls him from behind. Shocked, he discovers it's his elder sister. His jaw nearly hits the ground as she teases him for being sly, calling him a naughty little one. With an eerie grin, she teases about telling their mom, prompting our boy to offer her money in exchange for silence. However, she demands interest as payback. Gritting his teeth in annoyance, he hands her $5. The next day, our boy reads the news and discovers that Mr. Lee has been sentenced to 5 years. Clearly unimpressed, he wishes Mr. Lee would accidentally drop soap while in jail, thinking that if he had followed up on the case, the sentence would have been extended by 2 years. As he walks down the road, he reflects that the case with the teacher is over and shifts his focus to Miss Kang Soyoung's paternity case. He also realizes he needs to study for the university entrance exam. The next scene takes place in a cafe, where our boy discusses the lawsuit with Miss Kang. He remarks that it won't be difficult, adding that most of the work has already been done. Miss Kang expresses surprise, noting that she didn't know lawsuits and paternity tests were so straightforward. Our boy agrees, explaining that paternity claims and child support cases are simple when backed by solid evidence. Miss Kang, a bit slow, asks about the solid evidence. With a smug expression, our boy mutters, DNA, adding that there's no evidence more solid than genes. As he hands her the folder containing the DNA test results, she thanks him for covering the costs, admitting she never imagined having to pay for such things. Unbothered, our boy assures her that they just need to submit the documents to court. He expects everything to proceed smoothly from now on. The following day, however, our boy breaks the bad news to Miss Kang, stating that the case was dismissed. Startled, she reminds him of his earlier claim that the case would be easy. Our boy explains that during the time they were dealing with Mr. Lee, about 2 months ago, the man identified as her child's father died in a car accident. Shocked, Miss Kang questions if he's really dead, calling out her child's name, Youngmin, as she wonders what they can do now. Worried, she apologizes to her son, lamenting that she can't raise him without a father or child support. Our boy watches in silence as she cries, mentally calculating his next move. Suddenly, he has an idea. He tells Miss Kang there's a solution, making her pause. He explains that genes are passed down through generations, suggesting they use the grandparents as a match. Unsure, Miss Kang questions if that's possible. Our boy cuts her off mid-sentence, stating firmly that it doesn't matter if it's possible or not, this is how the law works. With a determined look, he assures her that they'll succeed. The scene shifts to Miss Kang Soyoung standing in front of a building. The place she needed to be was the Find All agency. Previously, in the cafe, our boy handed her a piece of paper with an address, instructing her to head there and give the note to the person she would meet. As he handed over the note, he noticed her hesitation. To reassure her, he explained that the place wasn't scary, all while wondering if the man at this point in his regression would already be bald. Though it wasn't important, but he was just curious. Upon arriving at the agency, she handed the note to a bald, dark-skinned man with a golden tooth, clearly the supervisor. The man assured her that he needed could be arranged with just a few phone calls. He told her to wait for a while. Time passed, and the story shifts back to the cafe. Our boy asked her how it went. She explained how the man at the agency managed to get everything she needed. Our boy, still curious, asked if the man was bald. She replied that he still had some hair left, but none on top. Hearing this, he chuckled, mentally noted that the man had lied in the past about having a full head of hair. With that out of the way, he changed his focus to the folder with the documents. He was stunned. The situation wasn't looking good. Miss Kang asked if something was wrong with the documents. It would be better if something were wrong. But now they know exactly who the father of your child is. The grandfather of Miss Kang's child was someone called Yu Mintik, a name that clearly spelled trouble from our boy's reaction. Still curious and lost, Miss Kang asked him who that was, like is the guy someone powerful? Well, he wasn't surprised she didn't know. Explaining further, he revealed that Yu Mintik was the CEO of Daryeon Company. She was momentarily stunned. She asked again, incredulously. He understands she didn't know her man's identity. Based on her expression, that much was obvious. Miss Kang could only curse under her breath, assuming the guy hadn't trusted her enough. Maintaining his calm tone, he asked if she was sure that the man was truly her son's father. She affirmed it with a sad expression. With this in mind, our boy declared, this is now an inheritance case. Miss Kang, still processing everything, wondered why that would matter, pointing out that they were rich, and child support wouldn't be an issue. So he has to explain. First, Yu Mintik had 3 sons. The eldest died in an accident at a young age. Her husband was also dead, leaving only one son, the youngest, who was married and had 2 daughters. In short, he continued, noting if Yu Mintik acknowledges this case, there is a chance her child could be an heir to the company. Also, her child's grandfather's assets isn't a small fry with asset worth over $1 billion, and her son could inherit $600 million, which is the share her husband would have received. Stunned, she questioned whether her baby could actually inherit that amount. This causes him to recall his previous life that Yu Sang-go, the youngest son, managed the company but, due to greed and incompetence, led it to ruin within 10 years. Even more puzzling was the fact that both brothers had died in car accidents under suspicious circumstances. Looking at Miss Kang's worried expression, he remembered that Daryang was not an easy company to deal with. Mentally, he lamented how the situation had become so complicated. Calling for her attention, whether it's child support or not, inheritance is now the main issue here. He explained that her son, Youngmin, is currently and the only direct male descendant of Kou Mintic. Trembling, Miss Kang doesn't understand. Taking into account the personality of the grandfather, he clarifies, believing there is a high probability that her son will be seen as the direct heir to the entire company. Meanwhile, he internally complained, realizing that what he thought would be a simple case involving a foolish teacher had now turned into stepping on a landmine. The scene shifts to Daryang Company headquarters. In the director's office, Yu Sango, the youngest son of Yu Mintic, asked a staff member if it was true that a lawsuit had been filed against his brother. The staff explained that the case had been dismissed because his brother had passed away. Frustrated, Yu Sango slammed his fist on the table. The staff continued, revealing that he had researched the matter and found that the woman involved was Miss Kang Soyoung, one of the many women his brother had dated. Damn, the guy seems to be a scoundrel. Fuming with rage, Yu Sango cursed his brother, Yu Sangmin, for causing him trouble even after death. Then he asked if it was really a boy child. The staff confirmed, pointing out that the paternity test had already proven it. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Yu Sango realized that no one would dare lie using Daryang Group's name. The staff also mentioned that Miss Kang was currently staying at a house for single mothers. Yu Sango immediately instructed him to go there and make her withdraw the lawsuit. He also ordered him to ensure that no documents from the court reached his father, stressing the case could become troublesome if his father found out. After giving his orders, he dismissed the staff. Left alone, Yu Sango stared out the window, muttering bitterly about how his brother was still holding him back, even in death. The next day approached quickly, and the scene shifted to a hotel. Inside, our boy advised Miss Kang to stay there for now. She questioned why she couldn't return to the single mother facility. It's kind of exhausting that she is slow. Still, he tells that they were dealing with a major company, and it wouldn't take long for them to discover the lawsuit and its dismissal. In fact, they had probably already found out. Still confused, Miss Kang asked why a dismissed lawsuit would be a concern for them. Our boy mentally considered a rumor he had heard in his past life. If the rumor was true, Yu Sango had already begun making moves. He told her to wait as he needed to confirm something. Before leaving, Miss Kang asked if he could bring her baby's belongings from the facility, and he affirmed without hesitation. The scene shifts to the house for single mothers. Luxury black cars lined up outside, giving the impression that a VIP was visiting. It turned out to be Yu Sango, dropping off supplies for the women at the facility. One of the staff members asked if Miss Kang was present, adding that the patron of the group wanted to see her. Another explained that she wasn't currently there. Meanwhile, our boy arrived at the facility and was shocked to see the cars. He noted that they had found the place faster than he had imagined. Looking at the cardboard boxes stacked nearby, he wondered if they were delivered here. Our boy glanced at his hand, clearly planning something. He already suspected who sent them but needed to confirm whether it was Yu Mintic or his son, Yu Sango. No Hyungjin approaches the box brought by the group. He's certain he can access the memory since it was brought by them, using his ability. We witnessed the scene from before. The men in black appear. Their leader instructs them to memorize Miss Kang's face and to make sure no one finds out it was the Daryang group behind it. No Hyungjin curses in frustration, realizing the man is actually Yu Sango. Now he has to think of a way to properly approach them. But before that, he heads to the hotel. Miss Kang is taken by surprise when No Hyungjin suggests she shouldn't file any complaint. She's curious as to why, so he explains that her name and vital contact details like her address will be documented. However, since she's at a hotel, she thinks it doesn't matter and says her number will do. No Hyungjin dismisses that, noting people can still track her with just a phone number. His expression turns serious as he explains that normally, it takes 3 months for a complaint to be processed, and if anything happens to her in that time, the case will automatically be dismissed. The reality sinks in. She realizes her life is in danger, and that she could be killed. No Hyungjin comforts her. That's just how the group operates. To keep things clean, they might even target her child. Next, he leaves the hotel. His mind lingers on Miss Kong, who had tremblingly asked if they should just give up. In response, he says there's no point, they've already been discovered by the group. Trying to reassure her, he says he has a plan, but she must stay in the hotel and avoid going out. Walking along the street, he finally stops after spotting a tall building belonging to a company called Yodo, meaning the place he's looking for must be nearby. Let's explore No Hyungjin's thoughts. He plans to find a jirashi. Basically, it's like a newspaper filled with low-quality rumors and small talk. But here's what's interesting. It often has access to more private information than regular newspapers. Plus, they run on a membership subscription. Sure, most of the info turns out to be garbage. But around 70% of the content related to economic matters turns out to be accurate. And for good reason. No one would pay for a membership if all the information turned out to be fake. Not just anyone is willing to send $2,000 for a newspaper subscription. Reflecting on this, he concludes he needs to find someone who can make a jirashi. He begins walking casually down the street, trying to make contact with passers-by. Later, No Hyungjin seems a bit frustrated. Apparently, he hasn't gotten anything useful so far. Suddenly, he suffers backlash from excessive use of his power. Not to mention, the last person was a complete pervert. Just as he starts wondering how long he has to keep this up, a man sitting on a bench asks if he's sick or something. A bit helpless, No Hyungjin says it was something that didn't agree with his stomach. So, the strange man offers him a drink. When he hesitates, the man claims to be a detective, though he doesn't really look like one. No Hyungjin accepts the drink. While using his ability, we see the man's past at the station. Turns out, this guy is involved in trading shady, supposedly secret intel. No Hyungjin is practically sparkling at this point. He's finally found the person he needs for the jirashi. Meanwhile, the man is spooked by his sudden change in expression. Regardless, No Hyungjin shifts his demeanor to something more apologetic, surprising the man as he claims to have once been a runaway youth. He explains it was thanks to a kind sister who helped him back then. The man grows interested, noting she must have been a good person. With a smug look, No Hyungjin realizes the guy took the bait. So he continues, explaining the sister is a single mother. And right now, she's being harassed by people from a powerful group. This makes the detective even more interested. No Hyungjin then reveals the people are from the Daryong group, specifically Yusango, who abandoned her. The man becomes excited, realizing he's struck gold. Before he can ask more questions, No Hyungjin decides to leave, saying it's getting late. But that's exactly what he wanted, as the man stops him immediately. He reminds No Hyungjin he's a detective, and with more details, he can definitely help. They talk more, and the man ends up giving him cash for support and his time. He also promises to start an investigation, but asks for reassurance that everything No Hyungjin told him is true. No Hyungjin nods, affirming that it's all because of child support. Now things have become a real mess. The man understands. He knows the company needs an heir, and this information could definitely shake up the stock market. Before they part ways, the man hands over his card, in case of any trouble, protection, or if a complaint needs to be filed. No Hyungjin gratefully thanks him. Later that day, Yusango is furiously yelling at his staff, calling them incompetent. He demands an explanation. How did the information leak to Jirashi? Fuming, he tries to calm down and asks if the information has reached his father. Relieved that the old man is clueless, he decides to keep it that way. His secretary lowers his head, promising to handle the situation properly, while Yusango thinks this whole thing is becoming a huge hassle. So, he resorts to alternative methods. He calls someone. He needs the person to bring someone to him. The man on the other end says it's no problem, as long as he's paid properly. Yusango confirms, and the scar-faced man grins. He learns that the order is to use all his men to deal with her, And yes, we already know it's Miss Kong. The man replies with understanding. And Yusango smashes his hand on the table, promising to end Miss Kong no matter what. We shift to a law firm. Inside, the lawyers are discussing the authenticity of the intel. The first lawyer, wearing dark glasses, speaks up. He believes they have nothing to lose even if the intel turns out to be false. Still, the other lawyer shares his thoughts. After all, the content involves a huge group, and there's a fear of backlash. The first lawyer agrees. But he adds that if they can provide some kind of solution, they might be able to form a bond with the Daryeon group. To the second lawyer, it sounds like a gamble, one that could fail and make them enemies with Yusango. Still, if the verdict favors Miss Kang's son, Youngmin, they'll gain the support of the group and even the chairman himself. In other words, it's a gamble they must take. After some contemplation, they reach an agreement. Suddenly, they call for the detective. The first lawyer wants him to tell No Hyungjin that they will win the verdict, at all costs. While all this is happening, our boy is just checking the fluctuation of the group's stock prices. Next, his phone beeps with a message from the detective. Well, it's not surprising at this point. So he quickly informs Miss Kong about the development. Meanwhile, we learn that the detective has actually been pestering, so he decides to call him. The guy is relieved to hear from him and heads straight to business. No Hyungjin, being sly, tries to pull a fast one, causing the detective to remind him. Apparently, he wants Miss Kong to listen in on the call and informs the detective that she got a job at a cafe. On the other end, the detective is surprised, yet skeptical, because it doesn't seem like a scam. However, No Hyungjin has already informed Miss Kong about him. So the detective asks for the meeting place. No Hyungjin quickly comes up with an excuse and promises to inform him later. Meanwhile, the man is grinning. Turns out the law firm already paid him 10k to introduce Miss Kong, and promised another 10k after meeting her in person. After some reflection, the group decides to meet the detective the following day. The next day at a cafe, the group waits patiently. Finally, the detective arrives. No Hyungjin quickly signals their location. With that, the detective approaches, and is momentarily stunned by Miss Kang's appearance. He quickly calms down and heads straight to business. But before that, he wants to be sure, since there have been a lot of scams recently. He begins by asking about Yu Sang-in, her boyfriend. Basically, any description that might help. A bit somber, she notes that he has his right ear pierced and drives a red sports car. She continues, explaining his favorite dishes and that he's allergic to peaches, though she's not entirely certain about that part. Meanwhile, the detective is stunned. He didn't expect her to be this thorough. Nonetheless, this isn't an interrogation, so she doesn't need to tell the cop everything literally. Now the detective feels stupid for being suspicious earlier, but Miss Kong just dismisses it. However, he instantly switches the topic, informing them about the law firm that wants to support them free of charge. Both of them show a shocked expression. No Hyungjin didn't expect the cop to be such a big shot. Meanwhile, as the conversation continues, he notes that it's all a load of crap. Basically, there's no such thing as a free lunch. It's unfortunate that he's still in middle school and can't act as a legal representative. Regardless, Miss Kong thanks him, since it's apparent she needs the support. However, based on how eager the detective was to contact the law firm, No Hyungjin can tell the man's been promised a huge payment. We shift back to the law firm. The lawyers thank them for coming on such short notice. As the process begins, they hand over the power of attorney, a written agreement that allows a lawyer to represent someone. No Hyungjin, calm and collected, wondering if they can file a lawsuit. This causes the lawyer to give a long explanation, but to keep it brief, he agrees. He notes that they'll need a DNA test, and will use the grandfather since Miss Kang's husband is deceased. Both lawyers assure them that everything is already prepared. Still, No Hyungjin knows things won't be easy. After all, they're dealing with a huge group. Speaking of which, let's shift to the chairman of Daryeon Group's house. The wasteful son has just arrived and is taken aback to see his mom. He's startled to see the envelopes. While she's clearly not happy to see him, wondering if she needs a reason to visit. Before he can say anything, she reassures him that his father doesn't know, thanks to her intervention. All trembling, he blames the Jirashi, saying he did his best work. However, his mother reprimands him for making excuses. Now he wonders aloud what he's supposed to do, saying he's constantly being watched by everyone. Her face instantly turns ugly. She has to remind her foolish son to take drastic measures, specifically elimination by accident. I thought the son was bad, but the mom turns out to be worse. Now she's a bit frustrated seeing her son still hesitant. Furious and enraged, she reminds him how money controls everything, and asks, who's going to bother investigating the accident of a poor person? Sweating and trembling, he says it might be possible, if he can find her. To this, she calls him an incompetent fool. She points out that law firms keep records of their clients. He should go there immediately. She can't possibly let everything her family owns fall into the hands of a single mom and her child. Immediately, Yu Sango instructs his secretary to track down Miss Kang's attorney. There he is, with that dumb look on his face, like he figured everything out, while his mom is just irritated. As a mother, she feels utterly disappointed that her son grew up to be a fool. A month flies by. In a cafe, two people are discussing Miss Kang's lawsuit. The lawyer reports that it's been a month, and the Daryong group hasn't even responded to the DNA test result. In response, No Hyungjin casually sips his coffee, not surprised at all. With his years of experience, he can tell they're just dragging things out intentionally. In other words, they're coming up with a different way to deal with the lawsuit. In response, the lawyer asked what he meant. He sighs, thinking he must be stupid not to know. Regardless, he explains, noting that there are two reactions expected from the Daryong group. The first is dismissing the case as nonsense and not worth their time. But since that's highly unlikely, the next reaction is stalling for time in order to execute their plans. The lawyers both grew curious and asked about Daryong Group's plans at the same time. In reply, Non Hyunjin grew serious while holding his teacup. Now, the second lawyer is a bit shocked, realizing the lengths the group is willing to go. Looking outside the cafe, Non Hyunjin has already spotted the group. And it wasn't long before a trusted staff member reported they were being tailed, which startles everyone. Now, he explains how Yu Sango couldn't get Miss Kang's number, so that's the reason they're being tailed. Tears spring up in Miss Kang's eyes as she gets scared, asking what they should do. Non Hyunjin, as calm as ever, reassures her, noting that this was part of his plan. With a wide grin, he adds that he prepared something special for the event. Later, Non Hyunjin briefs the group on his detailed plan. Basically, he chose this cafe because it's close to a congested area. Miss Kang doesn't seem to follow, so he explains that people are going home around this time, and she needs to head to the subway. In order for tailing to be effective, a moderate distance needs to be kept. So if she heads to the subway during rush hour, it will be possible to lose them. He then concludes the rest of his plan, hoping everyone understands. Meanwhile, Miss Kang wishes for him to be careful. Outside, the group waited patiently for Miss Kang. Instantly, one of them alerted the rest after spotting her, though the guy questions her sudden appearance. At the same time, she spotted them, quickly bolting off. Immediately, the group followed her, running down the road. While running, one man asked why she was so fast, causing his companions to point out that the area is crowded. Meanwhile, the real Miss Kang just stepped outside the cafe with the lawyers, clearly astonished by Non Hyunjin's plan, though he's just a kid. Still, Miss Kang can't help but worry for Non Hyunjin inwardly. Shifting to Non Hyunjin, that meant a dead end after running for some time. To this, the group finally breathed a sigh of relief. When they politely asked her to come with them, Non Hyunjin pulled out his phone. The next moment, he spoke, shocking the group with a deep male voice. In response, Non Hyunjin casually revealed his appearance, even joking that he was just a bisexual male. The man, furious, ordered his men to capture him. While throwing tantrums and barking commands, Non Hyunjin advised him not to mention something he'd regret later. Now, the entire group is shocked as the conversation was recorded. Non Hyunjin, seeing this, confirms it by repeating his earlier statement. It wasn't long before the cops arrived to stop the guys, who could only curse. Later that evening, the news reaches Yusango, who responds in anger and frustration. He reports the entire incident to his mom, who calls him pathetic and instructs him to deny everything. She believes the men are sensible enough not to spill everything. Also, since the situation is difficult, they need a lawyer, especially because the man used a company car, which links directly to them. She doesn't forget to curse her son's incompetence, noting that now they have the police on their tail. Her face turns ugly from anger, as she instructs him to take the matter more seriously. And no matter the cost, this incident shouldn't be publicized. The following day, we enter a cafe Miss Kang indicated for Non Hyunjin. He jokingly apologized for taking long, saying he had to change clothes. However, he is caught off guard by Miss Kang teasingly complimenting the outfit, noting that at the time, she considered him as her little sister. After the playful banter, they headed straight to business. Non Hyunjin learned from the lawyer that the Daryong group wouldn't acknowledge the recent incident. Then Miss Kang asked if it meant the trial would proceed in court properly. In response, Non Hyunjin doubts it, believing the group will stall for more time. So she brings up the summoning order. The lawyer acknowledged this, but says it doesn't mean the group has to appear in court. They can send a lawyer instead. Not to mention, the Daryong are stinking rich, so getting a good lawyer wouldn't be a problem. And now, he proposes the only way to solve the problem is to talk to Yu Mintik, the chairman of Daryong and the grandfather of Miss Kang's baby. But this presents another problem. One of the lawyers explains that if Yusango can mess with documents sent to the court, there's a high chance his dad, the chairman, wouldn't know. Honestly, Non Hyunjin feels like these lawyers are slow, so he suggests using a special service, which causes their eyes to widen in surprise. Meanwhile, we peek into Non Hyunjin's thoughts. He wonders if these guys are really lawyers, while Miss Kang concludes that our boy is just smarter than them. Before the story proceeds, the narration explains a special service. Normally, a service is when the court sends a legal document called a writ. Anyone can receive it since it's sent via mail. But a special service is when the court pays extra for a special person called a process server to deliver the writ directly to a specific person. So with normal service, anyone can receive it. But with special service, it must be received only by a specific person through the server. I know we're not interested in all that. Back to the story. Now, the lawyers realize that sending the writ through special service will prevent Sango from interfering since it'll be sent directly to the chairman. However, they sense Non Hyunjin has something in mind. He knows his request might be impossible, but he asks them to find the car Miss Kang's husband drove. The lawyer, of course, asks for the reason behind the sudden request. In response, he seriously mentions a rumor based on his previous life. He explains how Yusango ended his brother and inherited the company after the chairman died and all investigations were dropped. Later, at a car recycling center, they find the car thanks to a report from the police. Meanwhile, the lawyer grows curious. He's even considering recruiting Non Hyunjin if it weren't for his age. Without wasting time, Non Hyunjin uses his abilities. His mind floods with different memories. After some time, he successfully finds what he wanted. Reflecting, he praises Yusango for being smart when it comes to evil deeds, but says he's a total idiot. Now both lawyers are curious, asking what he discovered. In response, he bluntly tells them Miss Kang's husband didn't die in an accident, he was actually murdered. Both of them are shocked beyond belief. Before Non Hyunjin explains further, the scene switches to Yusango. The man is furious after receiving a letter from someone called Suk. His face literally twists with irritation as he promises to end the fool. Later, in another building, Yusango arrives calling out for him. The man shows a twisted smile, surprised he came, but says he's a bit late. Well, it turns out to be the Scarface guy from the previous chapter, asking if he brought the money. Yusango, in response, warns that the guy might end up in a coffin if he keeps playing around. However, Suk just mocks him. It turns out this man is the actual person who aided in the so-called accident that ended his siblings. Provoked, Yusango grabs him by the collar, stressing that the fool is not in a position to negotiate. In turn, the man calmly but firmly reminds Yusango that he owns $1 billion company. All he wants is a little love. However, Yusango just pushes him aside like trash. He's already paid him over $200,000 and doesn't understand why the fool is asking for more. Concluding the man is a fool, he pulls out a gun, intending to end the man's life. Suk immediately begins to plead for forgiveness. However, Sango only grows more irritated and annoyed, insisting the guy address him as chairman. And just like that, both of them admit to the murder of his siblings. Astonishingly enough, Nan Hyungjin witnesses the scene. Now Yusango questions his identity. Meanwhile, our boy strolls out like a Chad, recounting the murder incident. The reason the scene looks so clean is because the cause was brake failure, manipulation using ice on the brake and steering wheel. Even I don't understand how that works. Regardless, before the police and ambulance arrived at the scene, the ice would have melted, making the murder look like an accident. Of course, with his intelligence, Sango doesn't understand how Nan Hyungjin knows this. To this, Hyungjin tells Yusango that he witnessed the entire thing. But Yusango thinks he's lying, even accusing Suk of going too far to save himself. However, Nan Hyunjin's next statement causes his expression to turn grim. The moment the light turned on, Bro brought the police, and the entire conversation was recorded. Now chills are sent down Sango's spine as he begins sweating profusely. He tried to get rid of one witness, but ended up with two. And that's not even the end. His father is clearly disappointed in his son. Yusango is stunned to see his old man glaring at him, with a face full of anger. Immediately, he dropped his weapon. He approached his father, hoping to claim it was all a misunderstanding, but he stuttered in the process. But the old man angrily asked if he had killed his sons. Before he could explain, Nan Hyungjin notes that thanks to the special service, the old man already knows everything. With that, Yumintik grabs him, continuously asking him why. His lackey also realized they were screwed. And just like that, the police arrested him, charging him with murder and attempted kidnapping. As he was taken away, Yumintik couldn't understand the reason behind his actions. Later, we see the DNA results for the chairman, Yusango, and Miss Kang's child. At the end, the discovery was mind-blowing. Nan Hyungjin lets us know that Yusango is actually not the biological son of Yumintik. Now it makes sense why the kid ended the man's bloodline. As for Miss Kang's child, the result was confirmed. It also explains that Yusango's mother was the second wife, only marrying after the death of the first wife, also aiding in the elimination of the children. Nan Hyungjin also believes she knew Yusango wasn't the chairman's son and hid it. So the lawyer asked if the reason was tied to money. He affirms, noting this wasn't the only case. He explains the great lengths they went to in order to prevent the DNA test because of her husband's personality. In the end, Yusango and his mother were kicked out of the family. And that's not even the worst part. So Nan Hyungjin gets a detailed explanation, highlighting that Yusango's mother belonged to a prestigious family, but she cheated on her husband, which was obvious, and tried to swindle his assets. Hearing the name of the family, the lawyer concludes Yusango is from a rival faction, which explains everything. In other words, it was just a financial war. He's just grateful everything ended well. Not long after, Men in Black came under the chairman's orders to bring Miss Kang and her child. However, before leaving, she worries about what might happen next. Nan Hyungjin, with a smile, reassures her not to worry. After all, she's holding the only bloodline of the chairman. He wishes to take good care of Yusangnin, joking that the kid shouldn't turn out like his father. Even though it's thanks to that, the child exists anyway. She agrees. With that, he says his final goodbye, and she thanks him for everything. She also promises to do everything she can and pay him back someday. Later, he reflects, realizing this was the hardest lawsuit he's handled in his life.